Hello and welcome to the Health Edit with Shwe and Rishabh, a topic that deserves a lot more attention than it actually gets. Women's health. A video that the actor Vidya Balan had posted.
I've all my life I've struggled to be thin.
And I think that video went viral and she mentioned that she had gained a lot of weight.
There is a lot of visceral fat in the abdomen, fat all around your organs. Metabolism is just about how our body burns energy. The blood work won't measure is abdominal obesity. Your period is your monthly report card. Men don't have the privilege of that. And if you utilize that report card well every month, you can be in great health. When testosterone goes low, even for women, you lose sex drive. Everyone says, I'm feeling bloated, I'm feeling like so inflamed.
Women, they find it hard to deal with it. It impacts their fat loss, their weight loss, their ability to build muscle, their energy, mood, and everything. What again is hormonal health?
Yeah, food can do wonders, but no to the point that you don't need exercise and food is magic.
Losing weight is a function of Hello and welcome to the Health Edit with Shwe and Rishabh. We have here the fitness icon, Shwetambari Shetty, needs no introduction. She is the one who created the #1 fitness format, dance fitness, in the #1 fitness chain in the country, Cult Fit. She also happens to be the founder of My Third Space, the coolest space in Bangalore for women to lift weights and get fit. Of course, men train there as well. And you have yours truly, Rishabh Telang. Today, we are going to be talking about a very important topic. We'll be picking Shwetambari Shetty's brains on a topic that deserves a lot more attention than it actually gets. Women's health.
So this episode is powered by Orange Health Labs. Now, I personally use them for doing my blood tests. I also use Orange Health Labs for my gym, My Third Space, and it's very, very convenient. It's just an app. You go click, click, click. They come home, draw blood, and they give you a report in the next 6 hours. Very, very efficient, very quick, and yeah, good report.
All right, Shwe Shetty, what's up?
I'm just excited being here with you. No, I think it's going to be a great conversation. I think it's very, very personal to both of us about women's health. You have a lot of women in your life that you care deeply about, and they're all so fit. Let's go.
Awesome. So what I wanted to understand is, how do you actually look at metabolic health in a more objective manner so that you can actually go out and do something about it?
Yeah. So we're basically going to be talking about the biomarkers, right? So should we start with metabolic panel?
Yeah.
So metabolic panel they have about 4 to 5 parameters. The first one being blood sugar.
Yeah.
Right. Now, when we talk about blood sugar, we directly talk about diabetes and stuff, right? And we know it's very high in India. Now, we need to do fasting blood sugar, right? Which is after 12 hours of fasting overnight. Now, the range normally says between like 70 to 100, 70 to 99 is the value you need.
70 to 99 is optimal, you're saying?
Yeah, it's like you want to maintain that range.
Got it.
Right? When you get your report of doing blood work for fasting blood sugar. Well, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I say that if you want to be at optimal health, in your fasting blood sugar levels, keep it at 85 to 90.
Okay.
I keep it between that range because I track it every year, and mine is between 85 and 90. And I think that should be the optimal level for everyone. So I'm not saying 98 is bad, but you can get better.
Essentially, what I'm understanding is that there are healthy ranges as per the blood work that we get.
Correct.
So we're going to put that in the cheat sheet, and that can be downloaded below.
Yes.
But we'll also put what are Shwetambari Shetty's ranges across all those parameters.
Yes.
And I'm sure those ranges will be a little more tighter.
Aggressive, like maybe. Yeah. But the point is that you can achieve it. Just have to make some lifestyle changes.
Correct.
Nutrition, food, stuff like the basic ones. And we'll mention about what can be done for it in the cheat sheet for you if you want to be at that optimal level.
Amazing.
Right? Then we have blood pressure under your metabolic panel. Now, everyone talks about low BP, high BP. A lot of the times we also say it's genetic, right? But you need to keep a track of it because this is quite silent, if I may say so, right? I can look this fit, or I can be this fit, and I can be much younger and still have low BP, high BP issues. And that can cause from so many different things. Again, stress, anxiety, bad lifestyle, poor sleep, so many of those things. And tracking that becomes very, very important, right? To avoid any kind of chronic disease, heart disease, stroke, etc. Then we can talk about lipid. Now, lipid, of course, cholesterol is a little broad, but I would say let's look at your LDL and HDL, right? Low density and high density lipoproteins. You want to ensure that your LDL is not higher than the given range and your HDL is not too low.
Correct.
Right? Because that is going to, again, lead to chronic conditions like heart disease and other things. And of course, women, you need to also listen to this part of it, that sometimes the LDL goes haywire also with birth control pills. Okay, so that's something to be mindful about. Also happens during your perimenopausal phase. Your cholesterol can go higher irrespective of how fit and healthy, or you're trying to manage your lifestyle, but your LDLs can still be high. So that is something you'll have to keep a track of. And the only way to do is blood work, right?
Yeah.
And then under lipid, you have triglycerides,
Yes.
right? You don't want that to be high either. Again, fatty liver, too much fat, right? Those values also need to be tracked. And if it's on a higher side, you need to work with your general physician, your doctor, to bring it down.
Yeah.
Right?
I think one of the best ways to get your triglycerides down is just walk a lot.
Walk a lot. Yes.
So, yeah, of course, work with the doctor, but then make sure that you work with your trainers as well.
Exactly.
And you basically work out a lot on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because we're going to talk about all this in the cheat sheet also, we'll mention if it's high, what can you do? If it's low, what can you do? Because otherwise, I think we were going to go on talking on this podcast. So we did lipid, we did triglycerides. Something that the blood work won't measure is abdominal obesity.
Correct.
What? It's just your abdomen, just belly fat, but why don't we measure it, or why don't we take that seriously? I'm not so sure. This means that there is a lot of visceral fat in the abdomen, fat all around your organs. You don't want that, because that is, again, directly going to be related to heart disease, high blood pressure, inflammation issues, gut issues, menstrual cycle issues, like literally everything you name.
Yes.
Right? So you need to work on bringing that waist circumference down through nutrition, movement, better sleep, etc.
Got it. So these are the biomarkers that people can watch out for.
Yes.
If they want to check how their metabolic health is.
Correct. The first 5 parameters for our metabolic panel. Yes.
Exactly.
Correct.
And I think as per the literature, if 3 out of these 5 are out of the whack, then you have metabolic syndrome.
Correct.
And which is like an emergency, and you have to start working on it.
Correct.
Immediately. I'd still suggest that no one should wait for 3 out of 5 to go bad.
Right.
Should very proactively work on improving their metabolic health overall.
Yeah. And before we move on to the next one, I think I quickly also want to mention that at different stages of a woman's life, these numbers can kind of go a little up and down.
Yes.
Because like I said, at a perimenopausal phase, right, no matter how much you're doing everything right, things still go haywire. Right. So then you will need a little bit deeper intervention. Correct. When it needs intervention, and you have to do it to avoid.
Yeah. I think I very strongly believe that the fitness industry, which is, trainers and coaches and, business owners like us, and the healthcare industry, which is, doctors and physicians and hospital owners and things like that, have to work very closely together, because in the end, our objective is similar. We need people to get fit, live a healthy life, improve their health span.
100%.
Yeah. And I think even before you actually get to a point where things are going haywire, you should just start, tracking your blood markers through a blood test. Through a simple blood test, which is, I think, very affordable, which is also very easily accessible now. So there's no reason for people not to do these things.
Comes to your house.
Yeah.
And the report comes on your phone.
Can't be simpler than that. On that note, I'll just give you one simple, example. So my mother, who's who's very fit.
Yeah.
She's 63 years old and she's quite fit. She works out a lot. She walks a lot. She's very active. She's had hypertension. She's on medication. She keeps it in control with medication. She also had fell into a pre-diabetic range once, made a bunch of lifestyle modifications, and she's completely fine now.
Yeah.
But because we got that blood test done, because we frequently get blood tests done for everybody in our family, we knew that she is falling into the pre-diabetic range.
Correct.
And very early into the journey, we were able to make changes that prevented her from becoming diabetic.
Exactly.
So these blood tests done well in time can be extremely powerful.
Exactly. And my dad didn't have that option like 40 years ago, or actually probably 50 years ago. And he fell prey. And he was diabetic, and there was no option of even pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, you can prevent everything taking small steps.
Correct. All right, moving on. I was actually in a talk where, I was addressing a bunch of people on, of course, the topic of health and fitness.
Yeah.
And someone mentioned about a video that the actor Vidya Balan had posted.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And I think that video went viral, and she mentioned that she'd gained a lot of weight, whatever amount of exercise she did, whatever nutrition intervention she made, nothing happened, nothing seemed to work. And then someone told her that it's not really body fat and body weight issue. She's got a lot of inflammation in her body.
Fair.
And then she went on an anti-inflammatory diet. And then she finally lost weight. So I just want to understand, first of all, it's very easy to, throw around the term inflammation.
Correct.
And I'm not saying blame inflammation, but then it can just take you in the wrong direction. So I just wanted to understand what actually is inflammation. And again, how can women objectively understand inflammation in their body and then do something about it?
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, we've been talking about inflammation. That's like another buzzword of late, right? Everyone says, I'm feeling bloated. I'm feeling like so inflamed. Okay, I don't have too much to say about Vidya Balan's video, honestly, because I mean, I'm happy for her that she's gotten rid of her inflammation, and it is real, right? But the fact that you're saying that you're only doing it through food and not exercise is not what you and I would fully approve of. Having said that, food is medicine.
Agreed.
You can do wonders with food for your body. You and I know that best. Inflammation is just your body's, it's your immune system's response. Immune system's natural response to any infection.
Yes.
Right? There are two types: acute, chronic. Now, like after exercise, we have inflammation in the body. Correct. It's harmless.
Yeah, and we need that inflammation.
Exactly. Yes. Right? Sometimes if it's some small infections also, our body's response is in inflammation, which is okay. But then there is chronic inflammation. That leads to chronic conditions eventually, right? Gut issues, hormonal imbalance, cardiac issues, all of those things will happen with chronic inflammation. And of course, you can see it a lot of the times on the outside, because you'll just feel like your face is always puffy. Everything is puffy. Just you don't feel comfortable. Your clothes are not fitting correctly. Sometimes I should tell you this. Sometimes this ring that I wear all the time, I am not able to put it back in. And these are times like it could be around my period phase or whatever. Like I know my body is inflamed at that point, right? And it takes a while to figure out why the inflammation. Yeah. But through our blood work, there are a few things we can check, right? Two things actually. ESR, okay? The ESR levels, that's like one of the first things that shows up on our blood work. Okay. If your levels are very high, then you know there is something that's causing the inflammation. It may not even be major, but worth giving it a check. Second is your CRP, your C-reactive protein, okay? And there is high sensitive CRP also. These things can tell you that, something is wrong. Even your WBC and all of that, right? So when these levels in your blood work are high, please try to see if it's just there for like months after months, or if it's just a one-off thing. That's also another reason why we say do a blood work with enough rest. Like, don't do a hard workout today and do a blood work tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Or don't have an intense night today and do a blood work
Correct.
tomorrow. Or, because when you finish a workout and the next day when you do your blood work, some of these markers will be high. And that'll be like, oh, okay, why is there inflammation? It could be just a workout inflammation. So anyway, there's ESR, there's CRP. There's something which is, again, not a blood test driven thing, stool test, right? Because we talk about gut being one of the main reasons also for inflammation, right? So you want to identify if it's coming from food or your gut, something's not working. So a stool test can tell you. And I remember doing this almost a decade ago, and give me a nice lengthy report on what I'm allergic to, what I'm not, what food agrees with me, what food doesn't. So if it is something to do with your gut, then the best way to do this is elimination and addition with the support of a professional, of course. You eliminate a lot of foods and you slowly add them back. But people who have done this have been so successful in finally understanding what food causes inflammation in the body, what doesn't. So I yes to Vidya Balan's point of food can do wonders, but no to the point that you don't need exercise and food is the magic. No, you need both. But if you don't address inflammation, if it's constant in your report, like let's say every 3 months or every 6 months, it needs attention.
Exactly. I think one very good point that you brought up was elimination.
Yeah.
And I generally, when I work with people, I tell them that you have to be your own scientist, whether it's fat loss, muscle gain, or even something like inflammation or metabolic health and things that we are talking about.
Yeah.
Slowly take a few things out of your diet and you are the expert on yourself and you would know what probably doesn't work for you. For example, in my case, I like the taste of coffee a lot, and for the longest time I was starting my day with coffee, just a couple of glasses of water and then coffee.
Yeah.
It wasn't agreeing very well with my gut.
Yeah.
Of course, I still drink coffee, but I give it some time, and I have my breakfast and I have like totally reduced the amount of coffee that I am having.
Correct.
So what I'm trying to say is the strategy that you're talking about will be very suitable for people, as in they don't have to fully give up things that they like.
Exactly.
So if, let's say, bread doesn't work for someone, you fully eliminate it, see how your body feels, slowly bring it back, then notice how your body feels, and then stay at a dose which sort of agrees with your body. And then in the end, moderation is the key. So you don't really have to sort of give up things that you like, but you need to just understand what's the amount of that food that works for your body. Find that threshold and just live with that.
Couldn't agree more. I love eggs. I've eaten eggs all my life. Suddenly postpartum, post-delivery, my body wasn't handling eggs. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't give up eggs. I mean, one of my main sources of protein. So I gave it up for a very brief period. Then I added it bit by bit. I tried what form of egg. Like, is it working for me in boiled format? Is it working for me in scrambled format? Is it working for me in omelette format? Or mixed with something else? And then I figured that I still can and not be miserable. Maybe I won't eat like 4. I mean, just 2. So yes, absolutely. Elimination.
Exactly. And I think to finish this point and to Vidya Balan's point, she also said that, the anti-inflammatory diet was things like fruits and veggies and all of those good things. And of course, if someone eats fruits and veggies and all of those good things, you will lose weight. It's not really about inflammation or anti-inflammation, right? You're not eating foods that are hyper palatable, which are designed to make you overeat. You've cut that food out of your diet. If you do that, you will lose weight anyway. Exactly. Losing weight is a function of how many calories you eat versus how many calories your body is burning, and that is the only science that exists. Everything else is probably the way to get to that equation. And to do this without exercise, you can sit on a couch and still lose weight, because your body is still burning a lot of calories just to exist, just to breathe, just for your organs to work, right? And then if you eat less amount of calories than that number, then of course you will lose weight. But at what cost will that come? That will also come at the cost of losing muscle. Exactly. And that is the problem. And that is why people need to exercise. So if anyone says you don't need to exercise, I think that is wrong and that is not in the best interest.
I agree.
Moving on, and I think this is a very, very real issue, different a woman's life. There are hormonal changes through different phases. There are menstrual cycles. There is pregnancy, there's childbirth, there's menopause, and there are a bunch of these things that happen in a woman's life, and their hormones are just all over the place. And a lot of times there are issues like PCOS, PCOD, and a lot of other medical conditions, and women, they find it hard to deal with it.
Yeah.
It impacts their fat loss, their weight loss, their ability to build muscle, their energy, mood, and everything. So what again is hormonal health,
Yeah.
and what are the biomarkers that they can look at
Track, yeah.
to just understand, their hormonal health is in place or not,
Yeah.
or do they need to like have any sort of intervention?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said it all. I think the women's life is, you can say it's complex like our bodies, or you can say hormones are our messengers,
Yes.
right? They will time to time tell you, like how to take care of yourself. So hormones can really work in your favor or against you, right? Like I always say, your period is your monthly report card. Men don't have the privilege of that.
Yeah.
Women do. And if you utilize that report card well every month, you can be in great health. And that's what my mom taught me, by asking me that question every month. Did you get your periods? Okay, check. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just one part. But let's talk. You said PCOS and thyroid. So let's talk about thyroid, right? I think every second person or every other person I'm talking to are having thyroid issues. Either, hyper or hypo, underactive or overactive, right? And typically the signs initially are like mood swings, feeling really low on energy, your hair loss, sometimes acne, not motivated to do anything, constipation. There's so many signs, but if you do your blood work regularly, you will be able to identify if the levels are haywire. And what we need to remember that in your thyroid panel, when you're selecting, you need to do them all. It's not just your TSH, right? There is TSH, there is T3, free T3, free T4, and TPO, right? You need to identify all the levels. And if unidentified, it can also eventually lead to autoimmune. And this is from experience, I'm saying. I've seen these things happen. Of course, there is medication and there is major lifestyle change, right? You have to change the way you eat. You have to change the way you exercise. You can't do high, especially for hypo, can't do high intensity workout for women.
So
Like,
hypo is basically underactive thyroid.
yes,
So when your thyroid
correct.
is low.
Yeah, low.
Yeah.
Then you start gaining weight. But you can't do intense workouts. You have to do low to moderate. And the best thing is brisk walking and moderate to light weightlifting, right? This is what I've noticed in the women.
Yeah.
I think it works a little differently for men.
100%. Because I've, in the recent past, I've had underactive thyroid, and I
Yeah.
get my blood work done very frequently. So I'm just able to identify these issues quite fast and be able to do something about it. So I had very recently underactive thyroid. I continued with my training. I did my sprint training, very high intensity. I like lifting weights, which I didn't stop. So what I'm trying to say is that with respect to my training, nothing changed. But I made changes in my nutrition.
Yeah.
I made like small little tweaks here and there. And in the next blood work, which was 3 months later, it was all fine.
Exactly.
So I hear what you're saying. It's
different.
It's so much more simpler for men. And because in a woman's life, there's so many other things that are happening, and then you have to, if you have underactive thyroid, you have to make changes in your training, you have to make changes in nutrition, your lifestyle, and a bunch of things. So
yeah. My husband had overactive, so he just kept losing weight, but he fixed it. A little bit of medication in the beginning, then food changes, and you fix it. Everything is fixable if you identify it early, right? So we spoke about thyroid. Okay, let's talk about some main hormones like your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, right? Estrogen, women and estrogen, like it's literally hand in hand, right? So you want to keep a track of it. I don't think most of us do, but when estrogen goes haywire, again, it'll impact your bone density, right? It'll impact your menstrual cycle. And when it impacts your menstrual cycle, your PCOS and all of that start coming up, right? So track your estrogen. There are various ones, E1, E2, E3. We'll mention everything in the cheat sheet, but for your menstrual health, for your bone health, tracking estrogen becomes important, and many other things, moods, etc., right? Progesterone actually supports estrogen in many ways, right? They also kind of go hand in hand. Progesterone becomes important for fertility, ovulation, for pregnancy, healthy pregnancy, right? You have to have, amongst many other things, right? But when your fertility goes haywire, it's not just your estrogen, it's also your progesterone. So you need to track that, right? Then testosterone. I mean, no women talk about testosterone because it's always linked with men.
They're not even getting it tested.
Yeah, fair. Absolutely fair. But hey, ladies, we also need to check our testosterone levels. Suddenly, if you feel like, oh my God, like my muscle mass is just deteriorating, or I'm working out enough, but I don't see my muscle mass, improving, maybe your testosterone is low. I mean, yes, we have lesser, but that also can go low.
Exactly.
Right? So that's a great sign, like fatigue, deterioration, muscle mass, all of that. But another thing which nobody talks about is when the testosterone goes low, even for women, you lose sex drive, right? And we attribute losing sex drive to maybe things like, oh, I'm stressed. I've had a long day at work. I don't feel like it. So many reasons. And I've spoken to a lot of women. Sometimes you feel like, oh, it's just, part of the deal after a few years of marriage. It's just normal to not have that sex drive, which probably is. I'm not taking that away from anybody, but maybe you need to check your testosterone levels. Maybe you have an answer there. And also when those levels are low, the body, like this, when you're stressed or too much anxiety, poor sleep, also your testosterone goes down, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's
it's direct impact.
Direct linkage with stress and dip in testosterone.
Exactly. So my ladies, check your testosterone if you feel like your libido is not doing the work.
I think it's a very important point that you brought up. People don't talk about it. And I think it is important for us to just normalize talking about these things.
Yes.
So thank you very much for that. Anything else on hormone health?
Yes. One last one is cortisol. Again, we talk about cortisol all the time. It's just another hormone. We call it the stress hormone. Of course, cortisol in the morning when you wake up is very different from evening cortisol. So then when you measure your cortisol, you can measure it accordingly. The morning values will always be high. The evening values will always be low. But when your cortisol is messed up, there is a lot of abdominal fat, right? So tracking cortisol also becomes very important as a part of your hormonal health.
Yes. And I think cortisol has sort of become a buzzword on social media. I've seen videos where someone says, avoid this food in the morning because you don't want to spike your cortisol. So I don't think cortisol is, it's not about what I think. Cortisol is not a bad hormone.
Yes.
It's a hormone like any other hormone, and they go through their, peaks and dips.
Correct.
For us to wake up in the morning and do things, we need cortisol.
You need that.
For us to get a good workout, we need that cortisol to be spiking up.
Yes.
The problem is if it is chronically elevated, and that is what people need to watch out for, which a good blood test can tell.
Will do. Absolutely. Yeah. But none of the hormones, basically, like before we end this part, are bad for you.
Exactly.
Right? All the hormones, like I said, are the messengers of your body. So use them correctly.
Exactly.
Use them to fuel you instead of, feeling like my hormones are taking me down. No.
Correct.
They're only going to elevate your performance if used well.
Exactly.
If understood and used well. Yeah.
Okay. So one more very important topic that I want to talk to you about is bone health for women. So basically, we all lose muscle. We all lose bone as we age. But women, after they hit menopause, they lose it really fast.
Yeah.
And then it leads to bunch of issues with frailty and, fractures and those fractures are like fatal. So I just wanted to understand from you what can women do and when, most importantly, to understand their bone health better, and what are some of the interventions that they can deploy in the right time.
Right. Yeah. So I think this is, I mean, very quickly, right? About 20 to 30 is like your formation years. Like, a lot of the forming will happen. But after 30, the drop starts. For women, like the estrogen starts dropping a little bit, and then the bone also simultaneously drops. So 30 to 40 is where you can start checking bone mass, right? Then after 40, estrogen drops further, your perimenopausal phase and etc., 40 to 50s. So bone mass drops even more, right? The density comes lower. So even if you've missed checking from 30 to 40, please ensure you check 40 onwards, right?
Got it.
And then post-menopause, full dip. So it's like literally connected with your estrogen. And then bone mass deteriorates rapidly, right? So the right time to start checking will be post-30s. You don't have to do it every 6 months, obviously. Even if you do it like once in 2 years, it's great, okay? So that's where we are. And like you said, it's completely linked to falls, injuries, fractures, and so easily. And most importantly, apart from the checks, I think most of them are not even training enough.
Correct.
Right? Like strength training and etc. But those are your phases. Now, what can you do? How do you arrest this? One of the best ways to do this is DEXA scan.
DEXA scan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, this can be done once in 2 years or once in 3 years.
What is DEXA scan?
So it's a little bit like your X-ray, but it gives you a full vision of where your bone density is, right?
Okay.
It'll give you a complete scan of what your bone mass is, and it can talk about, it can show you how it deteriorates or, how you've maintained it, all of that. And it can be done at any diagnostic center, not any, but most of them have a DEXA scan, right? You can do it at any of these labs. I also would say that don't do it very regularly because it's almost like an X-ray. So maybe do it once in 2-3 years, and post 40, reduce it further.
Got it.
Right? DEXA scan is a great measure to identify bone mass. Now, a way to do it through blood test is check your calcium levels, check your vitamin D levels. And I think we know that about 90% of our Indian population is deficient in vitamin D.
Yes.
Because we don't just don't go out and, get enough sunlight and stuff like that. And also, it's not just about standing out in the sun. It's also about how you do it, They say that one of the best ways to do it is do it with minimal clothing in the pool.
Correct.
Right? But anyway, check your vitamin D levels. And again, in your vitamin D levels, they will show you, okay, this is your range. Always look to be at the optimal side of the range. Like I always tell them, all the women, be at like 40 plus, close to 50 in your vitamin D levels. That's your optimal, and that's where you're safest, right? So check your vitamin D levels, check your calcium levels, and they go hand in hand. Very important for the absorption. Another thing is, which we mentioned previously, when your estrogen drops, your bone mass drops. Now, in estrogen, you have the E2, estradiol 2. That becomes important. That is most important for bone. So check your E2 levels. And if your E2 levels are going down, that is going to have direct impact in bone density.
Understood. Got it. Right? So DEXA scan, how expensive is it?
About 2,500 for a scan. But you're doing it just like I said.
Once in 3 years. So definitely worth the investment, because if you happen to have weak bones, that's going to cost you a lot more in the future.
Don't studies say that the second most deaths happen from falls?
It's one of the major causes of deaths in
falls
older
old
adults.
Age.
Falls are one of the major causes of deaths in older adults.
Exactly.
Falls could happen because of loss of balance, loss of muscle mass.
Exactly.
And then they mostly would break their hip.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of data that tells us that, in most cases, if you end up having a hip fracture after a certain age, you'll end up dying.
Yeah.
So very important, I feel, for people, especially women, to keep a track on
Yes.
their
And-
bone mineral density.
Yes. And last point here is, apart from just tracking it, you need to work on it. And one of the primary ways to do it is you have to add resistance training.
You have to add resistance training.
Eat
And
right.
resistance training, for people who don't know, it's lifting weights, lifting
Yes.
your own body weight. You can also use bands, but don't
Weights,
wait
yeah.
for it to happen. I don't think you have to wait. I don't think one should wait until 30. They
Yeah.
should start in their teenage. In their
Absolutely.
teenage, women should start lifting weights, because it's just going to have a lot of upside when they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and
Couldn't agree
90s.
more. Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Anything else other than everything that we spoke about? General blood markers. So when you go to a lab, or when you get the person home to draw blood, what are some of the important parameters that women should look at?
Yeah. See, when you choose a general checkup,
Yes.
like you go on the app and you say full body assessment or full body health checkup, I think the basic parameters will be your blood count, complete blood count, your ferritin, prolactin, B12, very important again, especially for fertility and all that for women, magnesium, right? All of these levels, they actually are put together in your full body health checkup. So you don't even have to go and select it separately. It just comes. These parameters are all important for your day-to-day functioning, better sleep, better mood, just for all your nutrients to be in place, right? So checking these and then just fueling it with food, or maybe sometimes you'll need supplementation, can do wonders for the body. And when you drop like all this ferritin and prolactin and etc., again, they're all stepping stones to PCOS, right? So these are your general, but we will mention everything in the cheat sheet, all the details of what the tests are, but they all fall under full body health checkup. But before we close, I think something that again we don't talk about for women in particular are your tests for cervical health and breast health, right? Don't talk, we don't do. So I think a pap smear and a mammogram becomes super important after 40. I mean, you can do it sooner also, but after 40, pap smear and mammogram becomes very, very.
I think most women know about it, but they won't take the effort to do it.
Yeah, just
I think
seems like a
women-
very painful effort.
It is. And I think women also, in general, are not really prioritizing self-care, their own health and self-love.
Yeah.
I think that's how they've just evolved to care a lot about other people. I think it's time that women should just heavily start focusing on themselves,
Yeah.
on self-love, self-care, and things like the test you just mentioned, pap smear. And those are very important. Most of them know about it, I'm sure, but they won't do it. So
Correct.
it's a request. Just go out and get it done. Make time for yourself.
Absolutely. Prevention is better than cure, right?
Exactly. All right. I think a lot of good information. People are going to find it very helpful. Thank you very much, Shwe Shetty, as you are popularly known. Keep inspiring, keep guiding us. For everybody out there, on everything that we discussed, we'll be putting together a bunch of very detailed documents that you can download from the description below, and a few things that came up in the discussion today, like abdominal obesity. All of them deserve a separate video on its own. So we'll be coming back with more. You stay tuned. Just want to take a moment to thank Orange Health Labs for being a part of our first episode. Every test that we spoke about is pretty much available on Orange Health Labs. You can book a test on their app. Someone will show up at your home to administer the test, and you will receive the reports in 6 hours. It is very accurate, and I personally use it.